The chamber reeked of polished alloy and filtered air, a sterile perfection that never settled right with Admiral Grant Mercer. He stood unmoving, arms crossed, boots set firm on the human delegation's platform. Across the immense span of the Galactic Council Hall, dozens of alien species filled tiered rows of translucent seats, insectoids, reptilians, avians, silicon-born forms glowing with faint inner pulses. This, they claimed, was the unified Galactic Council, the Grand Summit of diplomacy and order across known space. To Mercer, it was little more than theater. At the center stood the council's speaker, a looming cephalopod whose massive eyes blinked with nervous cadence, its voice rolling through translators. Delegates of the Sol System, we ask humanity to reconsider. The council offers peace, trade, and protection. Mercer cut him short, voice like a blade. Protection? You mean obedience? A chorus of hisses, clicks, and synthetic voices filled the chamber, a surge of restrained outrage. The other human envoys traded uneasy looks, but Mercer didn't flinch. He buried too many brothers and sisters in arms to care what alien diplomats thought now. This emergency session had been called after months of failed backdoor talks. Humanity, still blooded from its harsh victory in the Proxima conflict, had rejected every demand to fold its fleets into the so-called Council Peace Force. The Council had expected compliance. Instead, Earth recalled its envoys, fortified its borders, and tripled its shipyards. Now the edge of defiance loomed. The speaker's voice echoed again. Admiral Mercer, the galaxy cannot abide human hostility. Already worlds fear your fleet maneuvers. Must we descend into ruin? Mercer's lips curved coldly. Ruin began when your armadas bombed unaligned human colonies and named it peacekeeping. We offered friendship once. You answered with sieges and embargoes. Another uproar shook the tiers, some angry, some frightened. On the far rise, the reptilian Kith envoy stood sharply, his scaled features twisted with fury. Humans are a rogue strain, unstable, violent. We warned you all. Mercer's gaze hardened. You warned them after your mercs butchered miners. On Titan's moons, after you hijacked our freighters in Council space. Tension gripped the hall. The truth hung in the chamber, heavy and undeniable. For too long, the Council had treated humanity as a crude but useful tool fit for exploration, expendable in war. But humanity was no longer the same. Forged by conflict, united in ways no alien coalition could grasp, and worse still, it had grown powerful. Mercer drew a steady breath, his voice cutting like steel. Earth will not be shackled by accords we never authored. We will not bow to a council that sees us as pawns. From this day on, humanity stands alone. All council envoys will vacate Sol space within 72 hours. Silence cracked into chaos. A storm of voices, screeches, tones, mechanical wails. Translators faltered under the strain. Some envoys stormed from their seats. Others scrambled to send urgent dispatches home. The facade of unity was collapsing. The speaker's limbs coiled in agitation. Admiral, this is madness. You will drag the galaxy into war. Mercer's gaze was unyielding iron. Then ready yourselves for war. Without another word, he turned sharply. The human delegation fell in behind him, without a sound, boots striking against the chamber floor in steady rhythm. The silence left behind was suffocating, yet one truth settled like ice across every alien mind. Humanity had walked away from diplomacy, unchained and unbound. The most volatile force in the galaxy now set loose without fear or restraint. The return to Sol was wordless. Inside the Valiant, once a Dominion-class diplomatic carrier, but now, clad in military-grade shields and stealth plating, Admiral Grant Mercer stood on the observation deck. Stars flared past the armored viewport, streaking light across his hardened face. Behind him, the crew worked in hushed discipline. They had been briefed long before the council assembly. They knew the truth. This was no longer politics. This was the first move of a war no one wished to name. Commander Jacob Rowe finally stepped forward. Broad-shouldered, eyes sharp with the weight of Proxima and Centauri's campaigns. "Admiral," he said, voice low. "Over 200 priority intercepts on Council bands. Panic spreading. Fleets are massing along the rim." Mercer's jaw flexed. He had expected nothing less. How long before they risk a blockade? Rowe frowned. 2 weeks, maybe sooner. "They're in chaos, still can't believe we walked out." Mercer's reply was a blade of certainty. "Good. Let them choke on it. They won't stop us." Rowe gave a curt nod, though unease lingered. "With respect, sir. That's 27 species aligned against us. Some fleets older than our entire history. We can't meet them head-on." Mercer's gaze turned hard, the look of a man forged in fire. "We won't. We'll fight as humans fight, fast, ruthless, merciless. That's the fear that keeps them awake." On Earth, the reaction was wildfire. The moment the rejection speech broadcast uncut, every channel ignited. Streets swelled with crowds. Anchors, generals, and zealots filled the feeds. For decades, humanity had lived as second-class citizens under the Galactic Order, forced to beg for scraps in a chamber that sneered at them. But that leash had snapped. Deep beneath the Rockies, inside Fort Resolution's hardened command bunker, President Anton gathered with the Joint Chiefs. Roden, the old warhawk who had spent his career warning of this day, sat forward. It had come, and he was ready. "Fleet status?" he demanded. Fleet Marshal Carter answered with a soldier's steadiness. 75% of naval assets. On full alert. 6th and 9th Fleets already shifted to the Soulgate network. Orbital grid at maximum power and tested. Colonies digging in. Martian yards have accelerated builds. Combat advisories already issued to civilians. Roden's nod was grim. "The Council will try speed diplomatic isolation, economic strangulation. It won't hold. Next comes force blockades, raids, maybe strikes. Our answer is strength, no retreat, no compromise." Steel glinted in every eye around the table. Peace was gone. The line had been crossed. The galaxy itself shuddered. On Council worlds, panic spread like fire. Humans, those reckless outliers from a forgotten star, had shattered order with a handful of words. Worse, they could back them. On Cauldron Prime, the insectoid hive mind debated recalling its far-scattered fleets before humans picked them off. On Valoran, the Scyther Syndicate whispered about opening their black market vaults, eager to profit from war. Even in the halls of the Thalan Dominion, whose fleets had been unchallenged for centuries, fear gripped their rulers. "The humans are insane," some said. "They'll burn themselves." But others saw the truth. The humans had shed fear, and that made them lethal. In the shadowed chambers of the Galactic Intelligence Directorate, Director Varric Ancient and Cold, an architect of empires, watched the feeds. Humanity was no longer predictable, no longer containable, and now they had allies. Reports whispered of sympathetic species shifting resources, smuggled arms fueling Terran colonies, rogue counselors hedging their bets. The Council's unity. Cracked by the hour. Unacceptable, Varric hissed. "Activate assets in human space. Destabilize them. Sabotage their industries. If they won't bow, we'll rot them from within." But Earth was already ahead. Admiral Mercer, before the Council of Defense, spoke calm but unyielding. "They will try subversion, first assassinations, sabotage, false flags. We will respond with steel. Counterintelligence runs under war protocols, no mercy." Across Earth, sleeper cells were exposed, detained, or destroyed within hours. Civilian resolve only hardened. On Mars, workers daubed never again across the hulls of fresh warships. On Europa, miners rushed to militias. On Luna, orbital docks blazed triple shifts under blackout. Humanity wasn't fracturing, it was honing itself into a blade. In orbit aboard Indomitable, Mercer faced his commanders. "Hear me well," he said, voice iron. "The Council will strike Sol first. That gives us one advantage: initiative. We will not sit and wait. We will hit first. And hit hard. Operation Dawnfall begins now. Targets, sensor webs, supply lines, relays. We will blind them. We will bleed them. And when they falter, we choose where to break them next." No voices rose in doubt. Every officer there had buried comrades. Beneath alien fire, restraint had died long ago. As Terran fleets began mobilizing, panic spread anew across the Galactic Council. Emergency sessions devolved into shouting matches. Some species called for overwhelming force, others urged retreat and diplomacy. But amidst it all, one truth remained. The humans had seized the initiative. On the frontier worlds, skirmishes erupted, Council patrols ambushed by swift human strike. Teams, listening posts went dark, trade convoys vanished without a trace. Each blow calculated, precise, and brutal. And then came the message broadcast across all Council frequencies, spoken in unflinching human tone. "We offered friendship." Yaowen's word with betrayal. "Now you will learn the price of underestimating humanity. There will be no more warnings, no more talks. Prepare yourselves." The Council was paralyzed that the humans were not bluffing, they were coming. And on Earth, as battle plans unfolded and war loomed ever closer, Admiral Mercer allowed himself a rare moment alone. He stood once more at the viewport of the Indomitable, Earth turning slowly below, battered, imperfect, but theirs. He whispered words he'd carried for years. "They thought we would kneel. Now they'll see how humans fight when there's nothing left to lose." The first Council fleets entered the Sol border 3 days later. They believe fear will divide us. They are wrong. They believe overwhelming numbers will crush us. They are wrong. He leaned forward. Humanity does not bow. Humanity does not beg. And if they want war, then by God we will give them a war they will never forget. Far across the stars in the cold dark of deep space, human strike groups prepared for their next phase. Stealth ships armed with advanced gravitic disruptors stalked Council assembly points. Orbital mines were seated in thepoches. To key systems. Infiltration teams moved to sabotage fuel depots and sensor arrays. For every Council move, humanity had a counter-move. And with every blow struck, the legend of human defiance grew. And aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Mercer stood once more before his fleet commanders. "The Council believes they are preparing for a decisive battle," he said. "What they are truly preparing for is defeat." He looked each man in the eye. "This is the moment we forge the future, not just for Earth, but for every human world. Every child who will grow up free because we chose to fight." A pause, no mercy, no retreat, no surrender. Across the stars, panic continued to grip the Galactic Council. For the first time in recorded history, the Council was on the defensive. And humanity, the species they had sought to dominate and control, now led the dance-off war. The message was clear to all. Humanity had rejected diplomacy, and now the galaxy would burn. The Council called it Operation Starfall, a grand offensive to end the human rebellion before it became an unstoppable conchon. 500 ships from 18 member species gathered from across known space. Carriers, dreadnoughts, battlecruisers, a force meant to terrify and overwhelm. They advanced in carefully staggered waves towards the Sol system. Their admirals convinced that sheer mass would shatter the human defenses, but they were walking into a trap. In Thetic of the Kuiper Belt, beyond the Council's long-range sensors, the bulk of the human fleet waited. Not in formation, not in static lines, but scattered in strike groups and hunter packs. Admiral Mercer had studied every campaign the Council had waged over the centuries. Their strategy always relied on overwhelming force, linear advances, and centralized command. Predictable, rigid, arrogant. Humanity would respond with chaos and precision. Aboard the Indomitable, Mercer stood with Captain Harrow, both watching. The incoming fleet Dea. They've committed fully, Harrow said, a grim smile on his face. No reserves. Good, Mercer replied. That means they'll bleed harder. He turned to the Fleetwood Ekinal. All units, Operation Hammerfall is go. Engage at will, no prisoners. The Consil's first wave entered the outer system at Saturn's orbit. Their sensors, degraded by human jamming fields, barely detected the threat before it struck. From the shadowed rings of Saturn, swarms of human stealth drones launched Avastin EMP strikes. Shields flickered and died. Engines stalled. Command. Ships lost comms and navigation. And then the hunter groups descended. Human cruisers, smaller and faster than their Council counterparts, moved in coordinated packs. They didn't slug it out hidden. They struck surgically, flanking and gutting isolated ships before vanishing back into the void. 1v1, the Council Vanguard ships disappeared from the tactical grid, their wreckage scattering across the system. On the bridge of the Council flagship, Vother's Pride, Grand Admiral Starr watched in disbelief as his battle lines crumbled. This is impossible, he roared. Find those human ships. Restore formation. But his officers could bear electric there. Own fleet, let alone the enemy. Human cyber warfare had blinded half their systems. And then came the second blow. From a hidden launch platform near Titan, a wave of heavy torpedoes slammed into the Council's fuel carriers and ammunition ships. Secondary explosions rippled through Thefleet's rear echelon, cutting off resupply and throwing the entire advance into chaos. By the second day of the battle, the Council offensive was in disarray. What was meant to be a crushing advance had turned into a desperate fight for survival, and humanity was only getting started. Admiral Mercer issued his next order. Deep penetration strikes. Long-range human battle groups bypassed the crippled Council fleets and moved into enemy rear sectors. They targeted communication hubs, fuel depots, and command relays. Entire star systems went dark overnight. Council outposts burned. The message was clear. There was no safe space anymore. Meanwhile, inside the Council chambers on Ellis Prime, political panic reached a fever pitch. Emergency sessions collapsed into shouting. Matches, some members demanded immediate retreat. Others screamed for total war. But beneath the chaos, fear spread like wildfire. The unspoken truth was now obvious to all. The humans were not fighting for territory or treaties. They were fighting to break the old order entirely. And worse, they were winning. Director Varric watched the Council collapse with cold satisfaction. Fools, he whispered. You provoked an enemy you did not understand. But even Varric knew the war was entering a dangerous phase. If humanity's momentum wasn't stopped, soon the entire balance of galactic power would unravel. Desperate measures were needed. On the Council's orders, Varric activated his most ruthless assets, the Black Talons, deep cover assassins and saboteurs planted years ago across human space. Their orders were clear. Sochows, assassinate key leaders, industrial capacity from within. Butants again, they underestimated humanity. Within hours of the first Black Talon attacks, human counterintelligence struck back with brutal efficiency. Dozens of enemy agents were exposed and executed. Entire sabotage cells were wiped out in coordinated sweeps. In one widely broadcasted incident, a captured Council assassin was paraded before the media, forced to confess the Council's Black Ops campaign. Public outrage surged, civilian militias swelled with volunteers. If the Council had hoped to intimidate Earth into submission, they had only hardened its resolve. Meanwhile, Admiral Mercer prepared for the next phase, the counter-invasion. For too long, humanity had fought defensively. Now the time had come to carry the war back into Council space. In the war room of the Indomitable, Mercer laid out the plan. We hit them where it hurts. Core supply hubs, shipyards, their home systems. No sanctuary, no safe harbors, Captain Harrow grinned. About time, Operation Iron to began 3 days later. Human carrier groups launched deep strike missions into Council territory supported by stealth cruisers and long-range raiders. On Thindustrial, world of Carthos 5, human commandos detonated the primary orbital shipyard, setting production back years. On Valoran Prime, drone swarms overwhelmed planetary defenses and destroyed critical energy grids. And on frontier world of Eiffel, a human-led resistance movement rose in open revolt, seizing Council arsenals and driving their overseers into the wilderness. For the first time in living memory, the Council was losing territory. And with every human victory, the old alliances weakened. Among Thalassar species of the Council, fear became a powerful force. Some began questioning their loyalty. Others secretly opened backdoor channels to Earth, offering intelligence in exchange for future leniency. Mercer encouraged this instability. Let them fracture, he told his intelligence chief. Divide them. The more they fight each other, the easier it will be to break them completely. Back on Earth, President Rorden addressed the world once more. His words were simple and unflinching. We did not seek this war, but now that it is upon us, we will see it through to the end. No peace until our enemies are broken. No surrender. Nor retreat. Across human space, his words ignited fresh resolve. Shipyards worked around the clock. New weapons platforms were deployed to the front lines. Civilian industries converted to wartime production. And most importantly, the human spirit remained unbroken. Meanwhile, the Council's second-wave offensive stalled completely. With supply lines shredded and command cohesion lost, surviving Council fleets began a chaotic retreat. Human hunter groups pursued them ruthlessly, striking at stragglers and crippling fleeing warships. What had begun as Operation Starfall ended in catastrophic defeat, and aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Mercer watched the enemy retreat unfold. He allowed himself a rare grim smile. They thought they could break us, he said quietly. Now they know the truth. He turned to his officers. This is only the beginning. As the war entered its next phase, one truth echoed across the galaxy. Humanity had rejected diplomacy, and now, nothing would stop them from reshaping the stars in their image. The fall of Operation Starfall sent tremors through every Council-controlled world. What was meant to be a show of strength had turned into a massacre. Worse, humanity hadn't just stopped their fleets. They'd hunted them like prey. Now, a new, deeper fear spread among the Council's leaders. The fear that humanity had grown unstoppable. In the shadowed halls off Council chambers on Ellis Prime, emergency meetings became daily events. Fewer and fewer member species attended in person. Some withdrew entirely. Alliances that once held the galaxy in check were fracturing under the weight of defeat. Admiral Koresh of the Thalan Dominion, one of the few remaining voices for total war, slammed a clawed fist onto the table. Cowards. If we fall back now, we cede the stars to these savages. But the Cliff Ambassador, scales dulled with fear, hissed in reply. You would have us throw more lives into the fire. We cannot stop them. We can barely track their movements. Even Director Varric remained silent, his once commanding voice tempered by grim calculation. His intelligence networks had failed to predict the sheer ferocity and effectiveness of UCH. Strike groups surged into Council space. At Valoran Prime, human stealth ships bypassed orbital defenses entirely, deploying deep strike teams that planted gravitic bombs within the massive orbital shipyards. The resulting explosions ripped the heart out of the Valoran fleet-building program. On Elis Prime, coordinated cyber attacks crippled the planet's global data networks. Banking systems collapsed. Communications failed. Entire sectors plunged into chaos. Even the mighty Thalan Dominion felt the blade. Human heavy cruisers operating in hunter-killer groups intercepted and annihilated two Thalan convoy fleets. Key assembly worlds lost critical resources. And everywhere the humans struck, they left. A message burned into wreckage. You wanted war, now you have it. Across council space, panic reached new heights. In many outer systems, local governors declared neutrality or openly defected. Black markets swelled with desperate council officials seeking to cut deals with human intelligentsians. On worlds like Ithil and Carnes 3, local resistance movements, long suppressed, rose in open revolt inspired by humanity's defiance. Mercers. Strategy was working. The more pressure humanity applied, the more that Consil fractured from within. But even as the council reeled, Varrock prepared a desperate counterstroke. If they could not defeat humanity militarily, they would seek to destroy them from within through treachery and terror. Varrock's Black Talons received new orders: infiltrate Sol's inner worlds and deploy bioweapons designed to Earth's population. It was a gambit born off desperation, and it would fail. Human counterintelligence, hardened by years of war, intercepted the Talon teams before they even reached Earth. In a brutal series of raids, entire Black Talon cells were wiped out. The captured agents' confessions were broadcast across every human colony. Public fury ignited. President Rudin addressed the world. They sought to poison our children, to exterminate us in the shadows. They have shown us the depths of their hatred. Now we will show them the steel of our resolve. Martial law was declared across the colonies. Production doubled, recruitment surged, and Admiral Mercer gave the order for total war. No more limited strikes, no more hesitation. From this point forward, humanity with the Council's ability to ever threaten the Magain. Operation Iron Wrath began with terrifying speed. Human battle groups deployed planet-killer weapons, hyperkinetic rods, and gravitic destabilizers against key Council military worlds. Entire shipyards were reduced to slag. Strategic gas jansus for fuel production were destabilized, rendering entire sectors unusable. On Council border worlds, humanity deployed psychological warfare, BROADCASD, footage of defeated Council fleets, exposed Council war crimes, and encouraged mass defections. And it worked. By the end of the first month of Operation Iron Wrath, 6 member species had formally withdrawn from the Council. 2 openly sought alliances with Earth. The Council's once mighty navy was in shambles. Supply lines were severed. Communications were patchy at best. In the Council chambers, what few leaders remained faced grim reality. We have lost control, whispereth Kith Ambassador. If we do not sue for peace, our worlds will burn. But the Thalan Dominion still howled for blood. No peace with these upstarts. We will fight to Thelist. Director Varrock, ever the realist, knew the truth. It is no longer a question of if we fall, he said coldly. It is a question of how much we lose before we do. Meanwhile, aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Mercer received new intelligence. Council forces massing at Elis Core Gate. A desperate attempt to defend the Council capital. Mercer's orders were swift. We break them here, he told his commanders. No half measures, nor retreat. His fleet, now swollen with new ships, veterans hardened by relentless combat, prepared for the assault. And as the final preparations were made, Mercer addressed his officers one last time. We did not ask for this war, he said. But know that we are in it. We will finish it. Across the galaxy, one message was clear. Humanity had rejected diplomacy, and now nothing would stand in their way. The Council's last hope now hung on the defense of Elis Prime, the ancient seat of galactic power. In the shadow of its mighty core gate, a final fleet had gathered. The remnants of dozens of broken navies. Nearly 300 ships, hastily reinforced with civilian craft converted for war. The Council's battered admirals and commanders hoped to make a stand here to stall humanity's advance and force them back to the negotiation table. But in their hearts, most of them knew this was not a battle they could win. From the observation deck of Findomitable, Admiral Mercer studied the final battle plan. The human fleet was vast now. Nearly 500 warships supported by a growing number of defected Council vessels, stealth cruisers, heavy dreadnoughts, carrier groups bristling with fighters. Every weapon humanity had built in these desperate months was now pointed at Alpha's Prime. Mercer's eyes were cold. "We strike a dawn cycle," he told his staff. "I want the core gate disabled first. No escape, no reinforcements." Captain Harrow grinned like a wolf and the planet itself. Mercer's voice was iron, no restraint, no mercy. The war had long since passed the point of civility. The Council had unleashed the storm. Now they would reap its full fury. As the human fleet surged toward Alpha's Prime, panic consumed the Council. Inside the capital's fortified chambers, the remaining delegates argued in desperate tones. "We must surrender." The Kith ambassador shouted, "Our worlds burn already. If we resist further, we will be wiped from the stars." But Admiral Kershov, the Thalan, pounded the table with a clawed fist. "Cowards, if we fall here, there will be nothing left. Fight to the last." Director Varric watched them in silence. His agents had already informed him. Half the outer member species were withdrawing support. Some were even opening secret channels to Mercer himself. The Council was dying. Varric knew it. But even so, he would not kneel. Not yet. And then the human struck. The assault on the core gate began with terrifying precision. Human stealth cruisers emerged from the void, launching concentrated EMP strikes that blinded the gate's defense systems within minutes. The surrounding battle stations were gutted by hyperkinetic rods, their wreckage drifting in silent ruin. Without its gate network, Alpha's Prime was now cut off, trapped, and the main fleet advanced. Human dreadnoughts unleashed wave after wave of railgun barges, tearing through the first layers of Council defense ships. Plasma lances carved through armored hulls like paper. Council formations, already weakened and demoralized, crumbled under the onslaught. From the bridge of the Indomitable, Mercer watched without pity. "Press the attack," he ordered. "No survivors." Captain Harrow's hunter groups moved like wolves among sheep, flanking isolated Council vessels and tearing them apart. On the flagship Vacthur's Pride, Admiral Thorne issued a desperate call to rally. "All ships regroup. Defend the capital." But his words were met with chaos. Enter squadrons refused to respond. Some fled. Others surrendered outright. The Council's will had broken. Then came the final blow. From deep space, humanity's carrier groups unleashed swarms of fighters and drones. They poured into the shattered Council fleet, overwhelming what little resistance remained. In a matter of hours, the skies over Alpha's Prime were clear of everything but human steel. But the assault was not yet finished. Mercer turned to Harrow. "Target the planetary defense grid. Level it. From orbit, the human fleet began its bombardment." Planetary shields flickered and failed under relentless assault. Gravitic destabilizers pounded key military complexes into molten craters, and amidst the firestorm, human commando units deployed to the surface, hunting Council leaders and securing critical infrastructure. Director Varric knew Thien had come. As his command center shuddered under bombardment, he turned to his closest aides. "We must prepare for exfiltration if humanity captures Miliv." But the room's ceiling collapsed before he could finish. A single Humangan ship hovered above the wreckage. Its weapons trained on the burning remains of the Council's last intelligence hub. Elsewhere across the city, human forces swept through with brutal efficiency. Council troops surrendered in droves. Resistance cells were crushed without hesitation. By the end of the day, the banners of Earth flew over the ruins of Alpha's Prime. in the capital's shattered chamber, Admiral Mercer stood where the consuls, highest rulers, once held court. Now it was a tomb. Mercer addressed the surviving council members, those who had surrendered rather than flee Ordi. "Your rule is over," he said coldly. "Your fleets are gone. Your worlds are redefenseless. From this day forward, the galaxy will no longer be ruled by cowards and tyrants hiding behind false diplomacy." There was no applause, only stunned silence and fear. And across Thesters, the message spread. Humanity had not only rejected diplomacy, they had destroyed it. Back on Earth, President Rudin addressed a global audience. "It is finished," he declared. "The Council's capital has fallen. Their armies are broken. Their lease exposed." He looked directly into the camera. "But this is not the end. It is the beginning of a new order. One where humanity will stand unbowed, answering to no one but ourselves." Across human space, celebrations erupted. But for the soldiers of the fleet and for Admiral Mercer, there was no time for rest. In a private war council aboard Indomitable, Mercer addressed his most trusted commanders. "The council is broken, but not yet dead. Rogue warlords and surviving factions will try to resist. We hunt them down. We finish what we started." He met Harrow's eyes. No mercy. Harrow grinned. "Wouldn't